You're listening to the podcast called What No One Knows. I'm your host, Lisa Marie Garcia. Please join us as I talk with some of the most important influencers, from entrepreneurs to C-suites to founders to venture capitalists. You will want to know their answer to the question, what no one knows. Thank you for joining. Okay, hello, listeners, and those of you watching our podcast. This is Lisa Marie Garcia, and I'm here in studio at the fabulous Tampa Bay Wave podcast, Studio One. Thank you for joining us. I have in studio Vadim Hiekin, and he comes to us from far, far away, greater Tampa Bay area, and he's part of the cohort group. So thank you so much for being in studio, and thank you for having the conversation with us on our podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. All right. Well, I don't read the bios because we put the bios with the show notes. You can all read his very impressive but I want to say a couple things. First of all, about your education. So you are Cornell educated and Stanford as well. You had been part of the cohort, the cybersecurity cohort, and that's where I met you a few months back. Did that start in 2023?
24, January through March.
Okay, so it was this year. It seems
Yes.
like 5 years ago. This year's almost over, but that's right. So one of the most recent graduates of the cohort group with the Wave, but it's not your first venture of being a CEO with a Magna, the company now, because you were also the CEO and founder of a company called Vimro, right?
Correct.
For
Yes.
20 something years. So we're going to get
Yes.
into that. So, okay. So just a little bit about your bio. But let's talk about the fact that you just recently graduated as a cohort and your experience with the Tampa Bay Wave. And I understand this was the first startup accelerator type program for you. So tell people that don't know what a cohort is and kind of how the process works. Can you share your time and reflection with the Wave?
Sure, absolutely. So the staff here goes through a vigorous selection process and selects a cohort that's still aligned along, a vertical like cybersecurity, for example, but yet, there's a lot of diversity within it in terms of the types of cybersecurity services and products that the companies are offering. And they're also very varying in terms of their stages. Some are much more mature, some are very, very early stage. And you get to really learn from each other, create partnerships, exchange ideas, give each other feedback. I thought I was very pleasantly surprised. I didn't know what to expect. And I was, having been running a company for over 20 years, I didn't really think I would learn a great deal, but I was extremely surprised, pleasantly so.
I wondered if you were going to say that, if you're going to say, what can I learn? I've been doing it. I've been living 20 something years. I mean, that's, a very impressive time to be a business owner, that period of time,
Yes.
right? But
It
see,
crossed
that's
my
great.
mind.
Well, and when I actually have a little rock that says coachable, we
Yeah.
have to be coachable, even if, sometimes we feel like, oh, what have we've seen it all. We've lived through it all and all of that. So yeah, coachable is a good thing. I love that you shared that the fellow cohorts were in different stages in the business. So what stage was a Magna in when they came into the Wave program?
We were at the earliest possible stage.
Okay.
We pretty much just started working on our MVP or minimum viable product around January, maybe very late December, while others already had sales, already had rounds of funding completed, were way ahead of us. And I was talking with Richard about this, and he said they do try to get a variety of people in different stages of funding and different stages of maturity. And it certainly was very valuable for me, but almost too early for a lot of the topics we were covering, because it was so early in the stage, but very valuable.
How did you even come to find the Tampa Bay program?
Let's see. I was at a network event. It was Deep Work. It's a fund out of Orlando. They sponsored an event, and I had met Amit there.
Okay.
And then got introduced to him and learned about Tampa Bay Wave, and met another person there, this individual named Boris. And Boris worked with the Wave as a mentor and investor, and he encouraged me to connect with the Wave. And then as I learned more about it, it was so almost last minute. I was running into like last minute deadline for applying and kind of squeaked in, made it in. But very fortunate to have it.
Very cool. So yeah, and we've talked with other guests on the show about how many applications, they got, and globally, Tampa Bay Wave has made such a big impact globally now. And they've been working on it, obviously, for years, but the numbers of what the competition, so to speak, was to how a Magna, was able to be chosen and won. Congratulations to you, because it's quite a number of people that aren't accepted to the program.
Thank you.
Very cool.
And the cohort was impressive. It was all over the world, very impressive. There were very few from Tampa, I think myself and one other company.
Really?
Yeah.
You know what, that sounds right, because I know we interviewed GSAT.
Yes,
Yeah, right. They
GSAT.
were part of cybersecurity. You're right. And they're not local for sure, but one of the few in Florida. So let's stay on the way before we start talking a little bit more into what a Magna does in your team. So what would you say is part of the unique offerings, or part of something that you gained from being part of the cohort, that looking back now, even though it's been only a few months, you said, I don't know that we would have been connected to this person, or I don't know if this would have happened for our company had us not be a part of the Wave cohort group.
Yes, I think the mission of the Wave is admirable. They want to build an ecosystem for startups and boost the economy of the Tampa Bay area, which is amazing. So they immediately immerse you and introduce you to the local community. And we're talking every large company, startup, mid-market company, anybody that is relevant. They encourage, make introductions. They tell you, they guide you through who you should meet, who you should talk to, what you should discuss. Make those introductions, and virtually all of them will take a call with you and give you advice as mentors. And these things could lead to customers and revenue and investment and so on. So I thought there's just no better way to get immersed in the Tampa Bay community and the area here. I mean, they have all the contacts.
For sure. And I've heard that from other cohorts saying, we met this particular person, and like you said, they took the call, or they took the extra time to help you. And if they couldn't help you, then they leaded you somewhere else. So it's not just that, here, know this person, shake, exchange, LinkedIn. It's definitely meaningful and significant. So thanks for sharing that. So let's talk about your company. And like you said, you're less than 2 years old with the Magna. Share what you do, how you're unique. Just explain who you are so people can know.
Sure. We're less than 1 year old.
Or less than 1 year. Okay.
They're a baby. So I saw a gap in the market that's very large in terms of handling incidents such as ransomware, incidents that devastate your data. It doesn't even have to be ransomware. If you look at the Maersk 2017 attack, it was just devastation. There was no ransom to pay. It destroyed absolutely everything. Every data center, mobile device, laptop, desktop, everything got destroyed except one data center that had a power outage. So because the power was out, the virus couldn't spread. They had inadvertently had an air gap vault, an isolated vault, right?
Yeah.
So rather than leaving that to luck, we need to do this deliberately. And it, to me, seems like I didn't come up with the idea. It wasn't unique. There are players like Dell, HP, IBM that are targeting large enterprises, but it's a vendor lock-in. It requires replacing all your infrastructure. They're very expensive solutions, and they're leaving a large gap in the mid-market and even in the enterprise market for those that don't want to change their entire infrastructure and go with a single vendor and one stack. So what the key to it is that this isolation and air gap is not only in the infrastructure layer, but human layer. So, and that's, I think, something that's neglected by a lot of these vendors. You need the third-party aspect. You need third-party custodianship. I was having a conversation recently with a technology company, and we were discussing and doing sort of a tabletop exercise over lunch of what would happen if somebody hacked into their server, and what would it take to jump from that server to another. And I had to back up and say, like, hold on here. You have Alex here as your IT guy. Does he have access to all these servers? It's the human factor. Nobody's jumping through in firewalls and encryption keys. If they can get Alex's access, Alex's identity, they're going to go everywhere. And it's very difficult for a company to do this themselves. To orchestrate that third-party aspect, think of what it would take. You'd have to give your people a different mobile phone, a different laptop, tell them not to crisscross and mix between the two environments. It's risky. The easiest way is to actually have a third party. Give your data to a third party in a secure one-way flow. Let them store it for you. Secure the access to that. And then when you need your data during some sort of disaster, you get a copy of it. That's essentially what we're orchestrating, and it's not rocket science. It's fairly straightforward, and I think everybody needs to be doing this. And everybody with whom I have a conversation that gets this problem, that's what I'm hearing. Why everybody needs this? Why isn't everybody doing this? And I think based on my conversations with who's getting funded, what venture money is going to what kinds of companies and what they're doing, my guess is, 5-10 years from now, this will be common standard. And I think specifications and cyber insurance policies are all going to demand isolated air gap and third-party custodianship of data.
Isolated air gap. I get it. I was making a face as you were talking a little bit, because I was thinking about, like you said, we all know the fundamentals. We all know the importance of it. We see it. I mean, and AT&T just have another thing. I mean, it's just everywhere. It's prevalent. And I remember way back, because I used to be in tech years ago, I remember us learning the DR when it was like no one knew disaster recovery. I remember that is like 50 some years ago, not that long, but still. So the idea is there, but the reason I was making the face is because, you'll bring on a client or, enterprise size client, whatever it is, you set it up, you put all the things in place, and it goes good for a year, and then someone doesn't keep it up doing the regular practices, even the regular practice of backing up our own data. I'm to blame. And I was thinking that was the face of when's the last time have I backed up my laptop, which I know the importance of it, just like what you do. We know the importance of not being susceptible, right? And but it's, again, it does take the dig in and the doing it and the management. And what if they're not your clients after a couple of years, I mean, there's the human factor in a different way than what you just said, right? But it's a human factor.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, people focus on the conversations I'm having with chief information security officers and others. They're kind of sometimes lament that not enough effort is going to recovery.
Right.
People need to assume this is going to happen. And it happens. The latest report I just read yesterday, SOFO's 2024 cybersecurity report, 59% are getting hit by ransomware in the last 59%. Year. And more, and I'm looking at the table there that they have higher and higher percentage every year is paying the ransom.
Yeah.
But you got to keep in mind, sometimes paying the ransom doesn't get your data back. Sometimes it's completely destroyed. Sometimes the hackers just destroy your data anyway and get the ransom and don't give you the encryption keys back, or they may not even have them. So the fundamental mind shift should be, this is going to happen, and we need to devote a lot more energy, resources, money towards the recovery process. And we're a piece of that. We're making sure you have some data to recover from, that it's not destroyed, but you need to also practice and automate your recovery procedures. And disaster recovery is almost like a little subset of this. This is a specialized disaster recovery situation, because disaster recovery, you have a flood or a fire, and in your East Coast data center, you fail over to your West Coast data center. Ransomware covers everything instantly, potentially, you know.
Right. Well, it's still a disaster, in my mind, I think it also has that element, it's disaster recovery, because you lost everything, and, you could, being held for ransom.
It's a global disaster.
Global, right.
Yeah.
Disaster's disaster.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's switch gears a little bit to, I like when I talk with entrepreneurs and C-suites that have 20 some years of being, responsible for all that you are as a founder and a CEO. What would you say is business advice? Business advice is based on experience, something you've lived through, worked through, that you can share, especially with, young entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, that maybe that's the one element they haven't had a lot of, is the experience in the market that they're in.
Right. Right. I think as an entrepreneur and as a leader, whether you're doing a large project and people look up to you, or you want to start a company and you have to build a team, not only, hire the best individuals, the most intelligent individuals that you can, but make sure they can work in a team. But beyond that, to foster the right culture, I found from experience that I would give people credit. I'd go out of my way to make sure I give people credit in public, one-on-one as well, but in public, it's very critical. If you're hosting a meeting and you're brainstorming solutions, make sure you find somebody to praise. Elicit the response that you're looking for from your team, and then praise the individuals that are coming up with ideas, whether it may not be the ones you pick. You still need to praise them, and don't ever, I don't ever take credit for myself. It comes back to you. What happens when I've done this is that the team is willing to bend over backwards for you. They will work harder than anything because they know they're going to get credit. And in the end, everybody knows that I was there, I was leading this team, that I had something to do with the results, that I'm responsible for the results. You don't need to worry about that. Just be humble and give out credit. Don't take it. Give it out generously.
There's a big word. I mean, there's a couple great concepts to unpack, but you ended with, that word humble. And there is a type of leadership that is a humble or servant leader, right? But that was even something in my career. I've been an employer for 25 years with my two companies, and I didn't know it for probably the first 20 years. It just wasn't part of it, wasn't just part of who I was. I definitely admire those servant, humble leaders. It's a big quality to have, and I think it's one of the best qualities to have for leaders. I loved, though, that you shared what I also agree with, that it is about the people. It's about your team. It's about how you take care of the people, and it's about the right people. So much of a successful business, I believe, is due to that. You brought up the fundamental that, studies show that people don't work for money. They work for the team and the respect and the positiveness that they're given from their leadership, right?
Yes.
So that's
purpose. People,
right.
You need to give people a purpose.
Give them purpose and praise them for everything, that they're doing, because they want to be seen and appreciated, like you said, appreciated by purpose. So that is my answer too, is it's all people. So thank you for sharing that, for sure. And sometimes, just to keep going there for one more second, sometimes you learn the hard way, and especially when you're trying to be a good leader of your team. I don't know if you're like I am in terms of, I like to give the people the benefit of the doubt and maybe give a second try, but I need to stay at that second try. If it doesn't work out, not give a third or fourth. I've learned that the hard way, but I had to learn it, right?
Unfortunately, you're going to have tough decisions to make. And I've heard people ask that in different, CEO forums and meetings. And sometimes the answer is you need different people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the case. And it'll be better for them because they're not going anywhere in a role where they're not suited.
Yeah, no, definitely better for them, better for the team, better for everybody. So, okay, that's fantastic. So how, with the start of your first company, how did that come to be? I mean, how is it a fun
Oh, sure.
beginning?
Well, .com collapse happened
Okay.
around the year 2000.
Yep.
And, I end up with basically no growth in sight in my career. Prior to that, when the .com boom was going on, it was crazy. So I decided I need to do something to grow. And I started a business. I don't know where it's going to go yet. It started as a hosting company. And then I realized really the value or unique factor, there's so many hosting companies in that day. This is before Facebook, and it's a different world, no Amazon services. And I wanted to provide high availability and scalability to small companies or mid-sized companies that couldn't afford what we were doing for, Lockheed Martin and the government and Bank of America and so forth, and Deutsche Bank, where I was when the .com collapse happened. So we started, we just almost stumbled onto opportunities. And for example, collegehumor.com, I don't know how many people still remember it. It's not around anymore,
Right.
But they had an MTV show and they were very popular, became a client, and they were struggling to grow. And they were getting tons of traffic, very, very popular. Their website wasn't loading, breaking all the time. They had no infrastructure, no monitoring in place. There are companies telling them to add servers and it's not helping. So after about 9 months of giving them advice, and they finally became a client, and I had a lot of sleepless weeks initially revamping their code and revamping their infrastructure, but we set them up for growth. They started growing like crazy, and eventually they got acquired by IAC, which is the hotels.com, ticketmaster.com
Yeah.
company. But what was interesting, one day I get a call from them. They were starting up, very creative guys. They were starting up ideas all the time. They had many, many websites and ideas. And I get a call, hey, we're setting up a new website. Can you set up a development service for us? And that website was Vimeo.
Oh, nice. Yeah, just that little website.
So I can claim I set up the
Yeah.
first development server for Vimeo.
Very cool. So it was sort of that one client that was growing, and then you were with, and then that kind of set your business up, and then, okay, then now you're rocking and rolling and getting other clients and that. I mean,
Yes, well, we got other clients because of that. They were actually had a link to us on their website saying we love our hosting company for all these years. I think they even didn't take it down when IAC acquired them for a while, and because IAC had their own hosting, they still stayed with us for a number of years. And I think, but yeah, we got others that were similar. Hey, I liked what you did they had a T-shirt site called Busted Tees. I like what you did there. Can you do that for us? And we would set it up. And we had, for example, you remember Extreme Home Makeover
yes,
show?
I love that show.
So one time the marketing company that was local, I was in Baltimore area, calls us up and says, look, every builder's website has crashed when they've gone on this show. Can you help us make sure that doesn't happen?
Nice.
We over-engineered it, nothing. It wasn't even a blip. They had a spike in
Right.
traffic, but it was up.
Right. I'm laughing. I don't know what it is about this show, but I feel like talking about old school stuff. But as you were
Yeah.
talking about that, I was remember how they used to have like the what was it, the counter, how many people visited that
Yeah.
site? Remember when that was like the big
Yeah.
deal? I mean, that's so like hasn't been around forever, but
The
they used to
number's
have it.
huge
Yeah,
now.
be like, yeah, right. Maybe someone's site would still have it, but it was like that was the thing of, oh, you have 400 people looking at your site, but yeah, definitely old school. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Now, I was very curious about your first company, Vimro. So getting always this time flies, but I wanted to ask you, how seasoned entrepreneur, seasoned founder, seasoned CEO that you are, what makes you excited when you to work in the company? What is it that you know that you've always liked to do that you find that you're doing in a Magna? There's always some element that, makes you say, I'm over this, I'm going to do something else, or, okay, because of this part of the business or because of this part of the role, I'm excited. It is still work. It still is
Right.
difficult, but what can you isolate about that? About you?
At this, I want to create an impact. I want to have, a purpose. If you look at, cybersecurity in general, it's a crazy market and everybody brags about the size of it. Like McKinsey had something, I think it's 2 trillion projected, right? If you think about it, this is crime. We're spending
Right.
money to fight crime,
Yeah.
right? And it's a big blow to the economy that could be diverting that money to doing other things than fighting crime, right? So it's just baffling how much effort is going into this, and it's good for cybersecurity markets, et cetera. It's probably, I don't know if I can say it's boosting our economy, but so much is being paid out in ransoms, and that is not productive, right? It's
Right.
just funding criminal activity and who knows what else. So if I can have an impact and some cost-effective strategies where we stop having to pay ransoms, and if we can reduce that by a fraction of a percent, that would be a huge impact. If we just remove the incentive to do this. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to have the solution for everything. There's always going to be something that's a never-ending game. You can't sit still, but that to have that impact, to have something where we create value and we have a result, that would be very meaningful to me. The work, the varying work, some I like more than others, some,
Right.
I don't like the sales part as much. I don't like the lead generation as much. I like that I actually got and coded some of it. I love that. That took me back some decades. So
That's cool.
yeah.
That, I mean, you just, whatever impact you can make, large or small, but just the fact of making the impact, like you said, maybe putting one criminal away, just kidding. But
Yes.
yeah. Okay, well, we are at our last question. And so our question for this show of what no one knows is to share something that no one knows, or maybe just a couple humans or one human knows. What can you share with our listeners, our watchers of the show?
Oh, I kind of used that up. I was gonna talk about the Vimeo server, how
Pretty cool. Totally cool.
how that came up. There were others. I had a customer. There were a lot of interesting stories, like FBI raids. If you remember way back, Anonymous was hacking CIA sites, and we ended up working with FBI on. It turns out there were two separate FBI groups working on the same thing. We thought they were cooperating, and they weren't. One was talking to us. The other said we're coming and seizing the equipment. Ended up on the phone for 3 days, being a proxy between my customer and the FBI, trying to get their equipment back.
Really?
Yes.
Were they, so one was FBI and one wasn't, or it was different?
Two different
division,
offices of
but
the
they
FBI
were, but not, but
that
yeah,
didn't know they were both looking at the same thing.
right, because they can't talk to each other because they are FBI. Oh, that's fun.
Well,
I mean, just as a joke, but yeah.
It's a big agency, but yeah, what ended up happening, that customer was also a hosting company, and they had a stolen credit card used to secure a server, and probably, I'm guessing, I'm just putting things together. They didn't tell us the details, that they were using that server to launch some attacks.
This is
Right.
way back. This is a little bit.
Yeah, it's way back.
FBI was one of my clients as well. We did FBI San Diego and FBI actually with World Trade Center move in Seattle. And the fun part of it, so this is way back, was, because they were FBI, no one could get in remotely,
Yeah.
which even was modems. I mean, forget it, right? And so you'd be working there with big long cables, out in the hallway and that, because, they were isolating and data recovery, right? All the way from that part, just their telecommunication system. But okay. Well, it's been so great talking with you. I told you this would go very fast, and I appreciate you sharing what you did, and congratulations on completing the cohort for cybersecurity. And thank you for being a guest in our show.
Thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our show, What No One Knows. If you'd like more information regarding our guests, it's in the description below, as well as if you'd like to work with our publishing and promotion team, that you can also find in the links. Thank you.